My name is Senior Drill Instructor Dwight T. Barnes. The first and last words I want to hear out of your stinking holes is, sir, do I make myself clear?
In many online discussions about the Half-Life series, you will routinely find that Opposing Force receives a lot of praise, with some people even going so far as to say that it's better than the original Half-Life. I disagree with this. Opposing Force feels very unpolished and unrefined, especially when compared to Half-Life and even Blue Shift. Obviously, it does introduce a lot of new things to mix up the original Half-Life formula, like weapons, enemies, and even allies. That must mean it's good, right? Well, no. Let's talk about the weapons. First we have the Displacer Cannon, which sounds like a great weapon on paper. Its primary fire fires a projectile that's reminiscent of the BFG from Doom or Quake 2, and then we have a secondary fire which will take you to a small section of Zen. However, in practice, the secondary fire gimmick isn't that great. It takes you to the same handful of locations, sometimes they might kill you. It ultimately feels underwhelming, and you may as well just use the primary fire to deal with enemies instead. I just feel like these Zen sections could have been a lot more interesting instead. There's also the Barnacle Weapon. Much like the Displacer Cannon, it seems like a cool gimmick weapon on paper. But in practice it's not that great, since you'll inevitably end up just injuring yourself trying to flail around like Spider-Man. Then we got the Shock Roach, which is basically a reskin of the Hive Hand from Half-Life, and then we also have the Sniper Rifle, which is basically the crossbow. Opposing Force also introduces the Desert Eagle, which has a very ugly model. There's also the Spore Launcher, which reminds me of the Bio Rifle from Unreal. And we've also got the Machine Gun, which I suppose it gets the job done. There's two melee weapons as well, a knife and a wrench, and they both do about the same job. Overall though, your inventory just feels very cluttered. By the time you get most of these weapons, you're more than halfway through the game, so you don't get much time to actually play with the new weapons. Moving on, we've also got some new enemies. Pit drones are pretty simple enemies, and you can easily avoid their ranged attack. The shock troopers are a lot like the alien grunts, except they have this grenade and feel a bit tougher. Voltigores are quite tanky, and you have to fight them in these very claustrophobic sewer tunnels. There are also some Black Ops soldiers which are just reskinned HECU Marines from Half-Life. Except they don't talk, it just makes it feel like the game's broken as they silently run about shooting at you.
Shepard, what the hell were you doing down there?
The game also adds some friendly soldiers such as medics to heal you and engineers to open doors, but they don't really get used too much.
Thanks, Doc!
We also get Otis.
Hey, you wouldn't have a quarter I can borrow, would ya?
I think Opposing Force has pretty bad level design for the most part. Many sections feel very claustrophobic and cramped. There's just quite a lot of small corridors and rooms that just aren't very interesting. Opposing Force also introduces climbable ropes which can be used to climb pits. At the same time, we have a few sections taken from Half-Life 1. In most cases they're reasonably well used and repurposed. Others not so much. Many sections are quite boring. There's just so many bland warehouses, sewers, storage rooms, more sewers, and vaguely industrial areas. There's just so many boxes everywhere. There are a few decent areas that are reasonably well designed and interesting, but they just don't outweigh the negatives. And then we've got the Pit Worm. It feels like a cheap copy of Blast Pit from Half-Life 1. This one section with the mortar just feels like the developers were just copying the airstrike section from Surface Tension. These parts also reminded me of the chasm from Doom 2. The warehouse level is a hot mess of loud audio, and it's just very reminiscent of the factory section from Interloper. The Gene Worm is pretty simple: shoot the eyes and then shoot this thing in the middle. Rinse and repeat. And then the G-Man whisks us away for a disappointing ending. Blue Shift, on the other hand, is a much better experience in my opinion. Each map feels a lot more distinct and refined. Each encounter feels a lot more polished and memorable. Levels feel a lot more spacious and interconnected. Enemies are well placed too, and you can tell that some real thought went into all of this. While there aren't any new weapons or enemies added to the game, what you do have is a much more focused experience. The game doesn't dawdle around too much in one area. Everything keeps moving and it feels really fresh. And we're not just revisiting several locations from Half-Life 1, it's even got a sewer level that's pretty good. Blue Shift also has a lot of explosions.
We don't pay you people to mosey around at your own convenience.
As you're just a security guard, you don't have a HEV suit. Instead, you must equip armour, and most of the time you are salvaging this off your fallen comrades. We get to visit Zen too. It's pretty decent. There is a little bit of platforming, but it's not too painful. Sure, there's no proper final boss fight, but what we do have is a very happy ending to neatly wrap up a well-paced experience.
We made it, Mr. Calhoun. We made it.
And if they find the body? Body? What body?
I just think that's a lot better than opposing Farce.